Great. Let's jump straight into this. Welcome to episode 8 of Unboxing New Music with Boon Hua. And today I have two wonderful friends, Carolin Ralser and Daniel Yiau. Yay! Daniel and I go a long way back. And I mean, we've done so many things together, playing together, and we did orchestral collective together, and it was really wonderful. Now he's doing a lot of contemporary works on the clarinet, especially bass clarinet. That's his super specialty, and also conducting wind bands, and also branching out into different areas. So I'm really happy to have him here, as well as Carolin. I got to know Carolin, I think only last year, I believe, when you started playing for Opus Novus. She jumped into our concert with 1 day notice because our flute player hurt his finger just a day before the concert. And I was like, oh my God, I need somebody. And Carolin's name came up. I gave her a text and she's like, sure, send me the score. I'll be there tomorrow. And it was like, oh! So I'm really happy to have both of you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for inviting us.
So formal. Okay, and we performed together as well. So we performed Kee Yong's piece, which we will talk about later, and we also performed the Burial folk songs this year, which was a lot of fun, and I really look forward to doing more things together. So maybe I will just go to Carolin and ask her about her background, her education, a little bit about her professional life, and how come you're in Singapore?
Yeah, so that is like a huge question, or maybe a huge answer, but I try to keep it very short. So I am actually originally I come from Italy, northern Italy, so the German-speaking part of Italy. And so when you grow up there, then the music culture is very, very rich. So they have like, I think, 180 wind bands. So every little village has a wind band. So that is the foundation of the musical culture there. And therefore, music education is super cheap because they have like this association of music schools. And it's highly government funded, so they are like convinced that every child should learn an instrument because they want to keep the culture alive, right? And it's wind bands / marching bands, and the level is really, really high, right? Because there's so much going on, like camps and education and stuff like that. So I grew up doing this, going to music school. And quite early on they start sending you, so they were very competitive, right? So they would send you to the Austrian, because culturally we belong to Austria, right? Because we used to be Austria, so culturally we belong there, so we participate in these youth competitions and stuff like that. So it's it's very let's say it's classical music as well, what they teach you, right? And I was very lucky. I had a very good very young teacher coming out of the conservatory. Hi Martina, if you're watching. So and then after and then when I was like in high school, I spent a year in England and I played in a youth orchestra there as well, and then came back from England, finished my high school degrees, and then I went to study music in Austria, in Graz. And I studied there. I studied flute performance. In German, it's like Konzertfach. And I studied Instrumental Gesangspädagogik, which is music education for instruments and voice. And I studied, my main teacher there was the principal flute player of the Vienna Philharmonic, Dieter Flury. And so I did my bachelor's, and between my bachelor's and my master's, I was in Freiburg and I studied there with Felix Renggli, and then I went back to finish my master's in Graz. And I am very, very, very grateful to those teachers I had, because like you might think that the principal flute of the Vienna Philharmonic is playing classical music and that's it, right? And he was so interested, and he knew everything, and he had played all the repertoire, all the contemporary repertoire. And it was actually it was just given that we would all, for our bachelor's, for our master recitals, we would play contemporary pieces as well. And of course, we had to play a classical piece, a Baroque piece, and romantic piece, of course. But part of the whole curriculum was always like contemporary pieces. And my teacher, of course, he knew how to show whatever was asked for, right? And I'm eternally grateful, as well as in Freiburg, like contemporary music was a big thing. And the universities I studied, like the composition department was very strong in Graz. You know, Georg Friedrich Haas was teaching there, Beat Führer, Gerd Kür, and of course the festivals like Impuls, Steirischer Herbst. So there's a very rich contemporary culture. And the Klangforum Wien from Vienna, right? They would come to give workshops in contemporary music later then, but I had already left. They got the professorship for contemporary music, so now they're doing the masters in contemporary music in Graz. So you can apply for, yeah. And same thing in Freiburg, right? They had the Ensemble Recherche, and Jörg Wiedmann, for example, he was teaching clarinet there, and I had some classes with him because we did some chamber music, so that was really, really beautiful. And you just get the sense, and then you start getting more interested. And after I had finished my master's, I did a postgraduate study in Vienna at the NDW in chamber music. And I took summer courses with the Ensemble Recherche and with the Ensemble Modern. And they always have, in September, they have these 2 weeks. And there I got really, really, really into this. And this is why I did then the audition for the International Ensemble Modern Academy in Frankfurt. And then I did the master's in contemporary music. And then, okay, so as a flute player, right, you have to have an orchestral position kind of to prove that you're able to do that. You have to win a competition. You have to win an audition. So basically you have to prove always, because, you know, there are so many. So you just go practice, and then, you know, you try your best. And then but you know, the thing is, it's getting very boring very quickly, right? So I thought, okay, orchestra, but it should be somewhere exotic. So I want to go somewhere else. And then I auditioned in Frankfurt actually for Guyana Symphony. And this is why I got to play, you know, in Guyana as principal flute in the orchestra there. And then after a year, I went back to Europe because I was missing so much like my contemporary chamber music, right? Because, you know, when you do Ensemble Modern Academy, so it's like this is basically, you're breathing that stuff. So you just, you know, and then I went back, and then we funded the Ensemble Chromosome with 2 of my good friends. The composer Hannes Kerschbaum was an amazing composer. He studied in Graz with Georg Friedrich Haas and Beat Führer and Bilone and Gerd Kür, and the percussionist Philipp Lamprecht. He is now teaching faculty at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, right? So, and we founded the ensemble, and people came out to me and said, "Oh, Carolin, can you compose pieces, contemporary pieces for students, for kids, for the competitions, you know?" And you know, you try to give back everything they, you know, because a lot of the education I got was for free, right? So I gave back to society, and I started composing and started giving workshops for teachers how to teach contemporary music. And yeah, so it led to my my little jobs, right? You give lectures at the Mozarteum. They have a department for music education, and I always thought that it's very important for music teachers to be very familiar with the field, because you can learn so much by trying out new techniques. You get so flexible, you get better rhythmically, you get better at imagining different sounds, different sound colors. You just can get better I think it supports your whole playing, right? Going to extremes dynamically as well, articulation, all that kind of stuff. So I really behind that, and that led to my PhD in that field, which I'm very slow, I have to say, right? It's not easy if you want to do something very good. I thought I could do this easily, but it's not, when you don't have all day time, right? And then,
especially when you're working, when you're a PhD, it's exponentially easier than when you're working, because then life takes over and there's so many things you have to do. So when did you move to Singapore, and how did that happen?
So that was in August 2018. Yeah. So in August it will be 2 years already. Wow, time flies so quickly. Wow, yeah. So 2 years ago, and so the thing is, you're doing a PhD, and I thought, okay, because since I left China, right, and we had projects in Hong Kong, and I organized a tour with my ensemble as well to Hong Kong, and I thought actually I had it at the back of the mind. One day you wanna go back to Asia, right? So I miss the food and everything, and and so there was the opportunity. So they had an open position, and I thought, okay, cannot hurt, right? So because I want to share what I have learned, right? And it's not just flute playing, and it's not just music, and it's not just theory. There's so much more, right? Like there's the whole performance science behind, and there's so much I would like to share, and I think SOTA offers a great opportunity for me to do that, right? Because you have like so many talented, interested students, right? And I can teach year 4, that is 20th, 21st century, and that is awesome because sometimes they think about contemporary music as something just weird and noisy and disorganized chaos, right? But then you show them the development over the last 130 years and all the different styles and ideas, and it's so fascinating, and the concepts behind and the theory, and you open a completely new world to them, right? And that is really beautiful, right? To introduce the young students to a new sound world, and I really, really enjoy that.
That's really wonderful. I mean, I remember the episode with Cheng Jin when she was saying, how much she credits a lot of her learning, and also a lot of her learning outside music to SOTA, being around friends who are very passionate about the arts. And so this is really, really special, and it's really wonderful to have you here in Singapore. I'm gonna go over to Daniel. Daniel has been sitting patiently memorizing his script.
Just checking the messages. Yeah.
Daniel, can you tell us about kind of your first experiences through new music in Singapore, and also maybe in your subsequent studies when you went to Holland as well as Finland?
Yeah, so my first contact into new music was probably when I went to NAFA, and I was hoping to like establish myself as like a trained clarinetist, but halfway through, I think it didn't work out. I was in like a rebellious phase in my life, so I dropped out. And then after that, I went to the army, and then I was like doing combat service for 1.5 years. And then it was then that like music was the spark of my life. And then I signed on with the SAF band, and I was a military musician for like 4.5 years. Yeah, so throughout my musical training, I was always playing in wind bands. And I actually think wind bands are one of the best vehicles for new music, because you're playing living music by living people all the time. Yeah, but of course the genre is different, and it might not be such serious music to like new music lovers. So basically from NAFA, and I was singing in choirs as well, and choirs were also singing a lot of commissions. Yes, and then of course you have the pianists who are playing new music all the time. Maybe
Really
not
enough,
so new, but like Ligeti and all those, it's not so new anymore, you know.
That's
but
pretty good.
yeah, yeah. So got some exposure from then, and then I left the military service to study wind band conducting in Amsterdam, and that was when the new music really started. Yeah, so of course there were tons of composers in the school and huge Dutch composers over there teaching, and then there were a lot of composers as well. And yeah, I was doing like an elective which actually teaches like the Indian Carnatic rhythms into applying it into Western music. And it was then where I actually started doing more performance on the bass clarinet. Yeah, so I was also doing bass clarinet on the side as a minor. And I was, of course, doing mostly new music because the bass clarinet is relatively new as a solo instrument. So I was doing new music on the bass clarinet here and there. And then with the mod, there were a lot of composers in there. So we had to play a lot of their compositions. And yeah, I maybe premiered 5 to 6 pieces a year with just the elective. And yeah, it was quite an amazing experience in Amsterdam. Yeah, everyone was doing new music. We had a fantastic recorder department of huge repertoire of new music. And yeah, and I had also the opportunity to work with a lot of musicians as a performer, as a conductor. And then I decided to come back to Singapore. And yeah, what could I do, you know, back in Singapore, and to give back to this whole family of musicians that I grew up with and taught me for so many years. So now I'm actually playing in a mixed instrumental quartet called, yeah, so yeah, it's quite a bizarre instrumentation. So I'm mostly on bass clarinet or auxiliary clarinets. We have a saxophone, euphonium, and a trombone. That's a really bizarre instrumental
It's
combination.
all kind of in the same
Yeah.
register. But of course, you guys can play soprano sax, and sometimes you
Yeah.
play some higher clarinets.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've been doing that since December last year. Yeah, we're relatively new, but we're championing quite a lot of new work soon. So let's see.
It's very, very exciting. So maybe we can go into the first piece of tonight, which is Oshún Olodì. And this is a piece that Daniel played when you were doing this CVA class. Can you maybe explain how that class, because you said it was Carnatic music, Indian Carnatic music, how did that get in touch with contemporary music? I don't see the link so obviously.
Yeah, because usually when we look at new music, when we look at the scores immediately, we're like, wow, what is all this 7 against 6, you know, and 13/5, blah, blah, blah. So basically the course tries to break down and just to simplify everything to how a Western instrumentalist would try to put it into notation. Because sometimes when you look, it doesn't make sense. And when you listen to the Carnatic musicians, it's very easy. It always sounds so simple, but actually there are so many layers within the rhythms, and then you have the melodic lines as well. So with that course, I was doing mainly just the rhythmical aspect. I wasn't doing the melodic aspect. Yeah, so with that, we looked into a lot of different pieces by Xenakis and whatever. Yeah. So with that knowledge, we try to simplify new music and to make it logical and actually sound like how it is supposed to sound. Yeah,
right,
because sometimes
when it looks very scary, but actually, you know, once you're able to sing it, it makes it much easier.
Yes. Yeah, like you would see an example with the following recording that we're showing. So it looks very complicated, and it also sounds very complicated. It's so exhausting to play it, but we try to make it as accessible to everyone with as much ease as possible. Yeah, I think that's what we were trying to do mostly with the course, because new music is so daunting to many. Yeah, and if you don't know how to approach it, sometimes it's quite, yeah, like, what do I do with this? Even as a conductor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to say, one of my most memorable classes when I was still a student at YST is with the Tony Macaroni, who is a bass teacher, who plays bass but is mainly a musicianship teacher in YST, and he does this whole Carnatic music too. So he teaches right off spring to the whole class, and he makes the whole class memorize this I think it's the glorification.
Yeah.
And he using like Carnatic syllables to memorize the whole section, and eventually everybody can do it because of the way he, I can still remember the hamburger diagram. I mean, if any of the YST people are listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The hamburger with the patty, and then this is this rhythm and that's rhythm, and then suddenly the whole section, which is kind of a test piece for conductors, it becomes so manageable and so easily consumed. Okay, so let's just jump to the music so everybody can take a look at Oshún Olodì. Okay. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, lots of fun.
How long do you take to prepare this piece with the
I think we took about 2 to 3 months of serious learning, but we had a piece for maybe half a year. Yeah, because we were doing this as part of the module, right? So we had a lot of analysis and how to approach to actually practice this piece of music. Because if you just look at it, you will not play like that, because there's a lot of brackets and underlying brackets as well with the rhythms. So it's impossible to sight read this. And also we had to like multitask, you know, we had to sing.
I saw that. It's great.
Yeah, we had
The
to
lines are
sing.
so
Yeah.
right.
We had to sing the lines, we had to play the melodic line as well. And on top of that, we had to like flutter tongue and physically shake our instruments as well. So it was physically very demanding to play this piece. And also we had a lot of like, yeah, we also had a lot of like inhalation and exhalations. So we would actually like hyperventilate initially when we first started rehearsing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it got to the point where it was okay, and yeah. We played this for my friend's final recital. Yeah, so that was also something that we had to prepare well for. Yeah.
The comments are coming in for the piece. Kee Yong is saying, so angry music, wow.
Yeah, so
Emily was
actually
saying,
with the composer, he's Cuban, and he has some sort of religion over there, and a lot of his music are like rituals, very ritualistic. Yeah, and that's why it sounds like that. Yeah. Yeah, sorry to break you off, but just wanted to put that in.
Absolutely. I mean, the kind of repetitive nature of it, the boop, 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 boop,
Yeah.
boop, 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 beep, beep, beep. And the rhythms, I also feel like it, in a way it's all very practicable because the rhythm doesn't change.
Yes.
It's just the subdivisions. So that's a very good pedagogical tool to make students be able to subdivide between like 2, 4, and then to F8.
Yeah, and also the melodic line is similar, but he changes the attacks and the accents. Yeah, so you basically just learn one melodic line and then you shift the accents. Yeah.
I'm just going to show the score one more time just to see the first few pages. I mean, this is the kind of notation. I mean, all this is pretty standard, right? The quarter tone and the shakes. You say this is really physical.
Yeah. Also, because we were learning Carnatic techniques, right? So these shakes are like some of the playing techniques of the Indian musicians. Yeah. So at least that's what we were told. So yeah. So we just had to follow. Yeah. Because the composer was also an alumnus from my school, so he also did the course with my professor. Yeah. So they did a lot of research on all these playing techniques of the Carnatic musicians.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about the embouchure positions of the turn as far inside as possible.
Yeah, so he wanted to turn the flute all the way in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you had to do some of the techniques, you have to twist it in. Yeah.
I see.
When you do the breathe in, breathe out, right? You do this inside the
Yeah.
You cannot do this.
Much resonant.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise you don't get the effect. Right? And the tongue ram you have to like roll in and
yeah.
know this. Yeah.
Yeah, basic stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get to get in contact with the composer? Maybe
for this piece in particular, no, but I did another piece of him for solo bass clarinet, which we worked together. It was originally for alto saxophone, but my professor also wanted me to do that piece, so we adapted it and I actually worked with him. Yeah. So then I knew like what he was actually thinking for some of the materials that he had in this piece. Yeah. Yeah, so there was like a backlog.
Kevin is asking, what's the name of this Cuban composer? I think we did mention
Louis Aguirre.
Louis Aguirre.
Yeah. He's based in Denmark now. Yeah.
Yeah, let's wish. I hope he's well now. Let's wish him all the best health. I know that he got, I think, infected by the virus.
Yeah.
So Fingers
Okay.
crossed that he's
Yeah.
well.
He's
fine.
getting better. Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. And I actually might be doing this piece with Carolin soon.
Clark.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Really looking
that's
forward
fun.
to hearing this.
I think it's much fun and does not get boring. Although it is repetitive in a way, but not right. It shows different shades of these sound combinations, and work on stamina and not hyperventilate. You have to be very economic with these things. In the beginning, you just use too much, right? Because you see the certain dynamic and you think, breathe in, breathe out. And all your life you have learned to take super deep breaths.
Yeah.
And you try it super fast tempo, and then you do 3 bars and you pass out, and that's it, right? So, and then, but the amazing thing is, right, you do this for like a couple of times or maybe weeks, and then you can play like 12 minutes piece, and then it's actually the amazing thing, like, with contemporary music, you see how fast your brain can learn something. It's really fascinating, right? Even like if you have like multiple layers, right? And that is extremely satisfying.
For me, it's always like a puzzle. When I see a score that when I first open it, I cannot understand, and then when you sit down and then you kind of take it apart bit by bit, layer by layer, then you start to realize actually the whole construction is very simple. The idea is very simple. The manifestation is not. But that it's like unraveling a puzzle, and it's so satisfying.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Cool.
So. Cool. Jumping into Carolin, can you just tell us a little bit about this next piece that we will listen to, Hyperplasia, and also the composer?
So this piece was written for me and a dear cello colleague of mine, an amazing cello player in Italy, Michele Marco Rossi. And we played this. We had a concert in Austria, and we also took it to a festival in Argentina, Dista Terra Festival. That was last year, and we took it there. No, that was end of 2018 in Argentina. They have like it's actually amazing. Like, it's in Patagonia, it's south of Argentina, and a great composer friend of mine, Jose Serrano. He's actually he's the organizer of the festival, and he invited us to come over, and we played this piece there. And Hyperplasia, I don't know how you say that in English, but it's basically a multiplication of cells in the body. So it's a biological thing that's like, you have hypertrophia kind of, and you have hyperplasia. So it's about not cells getting bigger, but actually the multiplication of cells. So I don't know. My brother's a biochemist. I'm not so good in these things. So I can because he might be watching, and I cannot say anything about these things. So, because I might just get something wrong, and then, so embarrassing. So better not talk about biological things. Now let's talk music. So, Manuel Zwerger, he's a very interesting composer. He was born in 1992, same area, northern Italy, born in Bolzano, and he studied in Innsbruck, and then he went to Denmark, and he studied with Simon Steen Andersen. And that is very interesting because they try as well to include like elements of musical theater or movement, a lot of synchronized movements, a lot of Manuel tries to explore instruments in a very different way, like always searching for something new, something interesting. So in this case, with this piece, actually he attached nylon strings to the cello strings, and I had to play them. So you have to rub your fingers in colophonium, right, to play these nylon strings. And since they're attached on the cello string, then you can actually play as a cellist. You play on the strings, and you will hear this. Even if I do the pits on the string, you can hear the position of the fingers, right? And this is why it gets so interesting. Yeah. And besides that, for the flute part, it's actually, I play it on most of the time, almost all the time. I play on the mouthpiece, like beginning and ending part. It's just to be played on the mouthpiece, and you can do all sorts of things, of course, on the mouthpiece alone, and different pitches, glissandi, like, you know, different registers, and of course all kinds of articulations, rhythms, and stuff. And yeah, and the ending part is prepared. The rest of the flute is just prepared with an additional thing the composer built to put on at the very end, and you play with trumpet embouchure. So a little improv there, and yeah, it was fun to play. Yeah, maybe
I can't wait to hear it.
Maybe we just listen to it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, here we go. That was super cool.
You know what's missing? The visual aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think listening to it with the score, you know, when you see like 10 times, that is no good, because then you start counting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you know, and if you don't know though, how long will this last? How many repetitions, right? So if you're just listening, then I think you have this moment of surprise, right? Because I think what we sometimes forget is the power of repetition and the power of synchronicity. Generally, you know, when just two people, you see this at pieces, Sten Anderson, when two people are doing the same movement, and even if it's just a stroke on the cello or something, right? This is so incredibly powerful. And you see that in theater, right? Theater pieces that are staged like, where the actor's doing something in a synchronized manner. That is always so fascinating to me, how so it actually multiplies. I think that the message multiplies when two people are the same thing, are doing the same thing, right? You don't even need 20 or 30 people to reach the same thing, right? So maybe it's about choreography. I'm not into this. I don't know about choreography, science, power of synchronicity. I have no idea. Yeah. So that was the piece. What I wanted to say is that, so what he does very nicely is like editing his score. And I think that is sometimes we don't really point that out enough as performers, how important it is to have everything neatly in place.
Would you want to talk about a specific section of the score?
No, it's just generally like, because when a composer thinks about how does it look like, what's the font like, what is the size of the numbers I put in it, right? So how do I emphasize what I really want? Where's the A, the B, the C? And he's one of these composers who thinks about all these things, right? And spends hours and hours and hours to make it look good. And it makes such a difference when you learn these pieces, or you get so fast, you are becoming so quick by reading it, and it's so satisfying that you can decipher what's actually in it. And then, so this is something I really enjoy when something is like, look at the cello part, this page, for example, right? So the strings like distributed nicely, and you can see, and it's very clear, here we are all together. And so, I think he did this very well.
And faden is the nylon strings you pull.
Exactly, the faden is the nylon strings. Yeah, the faden.
Yeah, I was so struck by the sound world of it. It's so it's quite metal sometimes. It's very but the use of rhythms and the use of repetition is so intricate.
And it's not over complicated rhythms.
No, this is the thing, right?
Yeah, but it sounds so new, and fresh. Yeah.
Like string players are always afraid of overpressure. Like every time you ask string players to do overpressure, they were always like, let's see how far I can push this. I'll do maybe just a little bit, and then if he wants more, I'll give more. But I mean, when you really press into it, there's so much colors and so much interesting sound. Can you just talk a little bit about the improvisation at the end?
Yeah, so okay, basically it was with if you can imagine, I can show you this. So sorry, I had this kind of a trichter attached, and I had to tape all the keys, right? So the flute was actually taped so that it cannot get any sound out of it. And then you have this kind of, it's kind of a mute he actually made himself. I don't have it here, it's unfortunately. So there was a mute attached to this part, and you just go trumpet embouchure, right? And you unfortunately I didn't have a microphone there, and it's a live recording, so it's not that, it's very soft in the recording, unfortunately, but it's basically a, and you can do this like with flutter tongues, right? Can sing as well, right?
It's the electronic sound that kind of pervades the whole piece as well, right? There's this, it's all acoustic sound, but it just reminds me of, like, I don't know,
like
synths,
yeah.
And I can imagine at the end, it's so theatrical, when you're holding it this way, when you've been playing with just the mouthpiece for the whole piece.
And the audience needs that, right? Like the audience is watching right at the beginning. You have this is all you do, right? And then so I think it's very important for contemporary music. Like, we're talking about, we have to, we need an audience, right?
Yeah.
And to help them somehow, and to get like to get interested, to explore new things, and even dare to look at something new, right? Because sometimes you're not just scared of the sounds, but maybe you're scared of seeing something you haven't seen before, right? That's like
right.
The nature that, always when I tell my students, right, why is it weird? Why don't we like it? Why does it make us feel uncomfortable? And it's exactly because our body tells us this is not safe. right? It's like Stone Age, dark wood. You're walking, you hear something you're not familiar with. You are. This is something that scares you to death, because that means something will jump out in a minute and it will eat you up immediately, right? You know, this is scary. Hearing something for our human body, hearing something we are not familiar with is like, it's really scary. And you need courage to endure that.
I would offer kind of a different way of looking at this. I remember one of my most memorable concerts in the past year and a half is a concert by Ding Yi, the Chinese ensemble, and they did a concert where it's Chinese contemporary music, and of course some of it might not be as out there as what we just heard, but still it's rather strange. And since for the most part, I think the Chinese orchestra genre is quite melodic and traditional, and so I would say the music that the audience heard there was really quite out there. But still, the audience was there with such curiosity and amazement, and they were like, "Wow, this is an interesting sound, and that's an interesting sound." And I feel like sometimes, as you know, like musicians, like trained musicians, we tend to have a bit of a preconceived idea of, oh, this is contemporary music, I think I know what it's going to sound like. And that's dangerous, because once we're not open and to be exposed to sounds that might really delight us or might give us a completely different idea, and that's a shame. And so I'm really striving, I'm thinking hard, how can we get this curiosity? How can we, evoke this, just come in and be open about it. You might like it, you might hate it, it doesn't matter. But if you're bored, then it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Sorry.
Go on,
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that to keep an open mind, you need a lot of courage, right? And you're having so many expectations of what is good to hear, what is not good to hear, and stuff like that. Once you're there and you dare to imagine, you let images coming up, then it gets super interesting. Every little sound gets a picture maybe in your head, but using your fantasy is something that people kind of sometimes are not used to do anymore, because everything is visualized, right? Everything comes with pictures, and this is why sometimes it's hard for them to create these pictures in their minds by themselves. And if we just encourage them just to let something happen, right, then I think we have done our job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, like, this is a case in point in what you just said, like showing the score. Like, if we played the same piece of music without showing the score at least once before seeing the score, that makes it so much more interesting. I mean, we can't do it because of time constraints in this episode. But I mean, I really highly recommend people to listen to something first, and then just to imagine, like, how was it possible to notate something like that? And then when you see the notation, you're like, oh wow, that's a really creative thinking, or that's completely something I didn't expect. And I remember talking to Emily about this. And maybe this is something we can do in future episodes. Like, if we have enough time just to play the piece once, and then again with the score. This is also exciting, and we already reached 11 o'clock, but we still have one more piece to go. And so I just wanted to tell our audience that this show is going to be like the last episode, a little bit longer. I'm thinking around maybe an hour and a half. So if you need to leave and go sleep early because it's Sunday tomorrow, please. But you'll be missing out on a really wonderful piece by Kee Yong Chong. And this is the piece that we all played together. I think this was last year, and it's called Beneath Your Soul. And I just wanted to read a short story. I was asking Kee Yong about this piece. He said he mentioned a story when we performed it last year, and I thought it was very, very touching and very beautiful, and I think it's worth mentioning. But before we play it, Kee Yong mentioned that this piece is dedicated to his teacher. I hope I don't butcher his name because it's French, Louis Aguirre. And the story is that when Kee Yong was studying in Brussels, Henri Poussier has already retired from teaching, so he doesn't teach any more students. And Kee Yong ran into him when he was working in a Taiwanese restaurant in Brussels, and he wanted to study with the master, and the master said, "No, sorry, I'm this is not possible." And so he decided to submit a piece for his master class in the La Chanson, and he was so moved by the piece that he decided to take him under his wing. And this piece is dedicated to him because it takes tone roles from the master, and he kind of incorporates in the piece. So this is a piece where it's where there's a kind of a dedication and kind of a reverence, and I think it's very, very beautiful in the way it combines a lot of different different lines. They all meet at a certain point, but actually all the lines are very, very free. I'm laughing because Diana is tuning in and she speaks French, and she's saying, "Not bad, your French, just don't pronounce the B, the H." Henri Poussier. Okay. Anyway, I thought we performed this piece, we as in Opus Novus, in the Yoshito Conservatory last year, and it was really fun to have Kee Yong join us during the rehearsals. He was there for the last two rehearsals, and I think having a live composer be in the rehearsals is such an important part, because he can tell you things that things just happen this way. We just understand what kind of sound, and nothing beats that. So maybe before we dive into talking about the challenges of the score and how we learn it, I would just like to play the whole piece, and then we can look at it. We can unbox it together. And here we go. Wow, that was pretty intense.
Nice ending. With the
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful, right? With all the different instruments kind of on the thread at the end. Wow. Um, I wanted to ask, since both of you play on this piece, like, what were some challenges that that you had when you were preparing this piece? I mean, for Carolin, you only had a day or two to kind of look through the part and just jump in.
For me, the thing is, the bars are super long, right? So you start with tempo 40 or something, right? If I remember correctly. So, and then you have like 12 crotchets in a bar or something. So the bars are really huge, right? And I was standing off stage, right? I was standing away from the ensemble. So sometimes it's just, you have to have a different setting, and then you have to figure out, okay, where are the 12 beats and stuff like that. So it's just because it's like extremely slow, right, in the beginning, and it's a very lyrical piece, although there's so very lyrical. And yeah, so that was, for me, it was kind of just getting used to the setting and knowing where we are, kind of. Yeah. So,
I wanted to show the audience kind of the setup of the piece. I mean, this piece is perfect for social distancing because so you can see that the ensemble is mainly here. The trumpet is on the left, the flute's on the right, and there's also a double bass, which is not in this picture. I think it kind of went on to the next page. But so you have kind of a surround sound effect, and I also agree that the measures are very, very long, because I think he wants to portray this kind of timelessness, this no beats, and it's just time. But it's also at the same time, not easy to make sure that you get together because of all the distance as well. But there was a lot of fun putting this together. It was quite challenging to conduct as well because the tempo is very slow, and so there are some places where it's you have to divide it very, very clearly. I remember the first few rehearsals, we were just going through maybe some of the like 10/4 measures, and I'm saying, okay, this measure I'm doing a 3/4 and a 3/4 and a 4/4, because if it's all like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, it's just so confusing for everyone.
yeah.
Also, on this page, it was really tough for my part, because if you look at the B flat clarinet part, I actually have like ad-lib stuff as well, while there is a underlaying like tempo and pulse, and I just had to like do my own thing and just be focused.
But I mean, I think the idea is really that all the instruments are soloists and they kind of do their own thing, and we're trying to find a place to meet, which makes it very challenging, but at the same time it's very free too, because everybody has their own, accelerando that you don't be with the ensemble. And in some ways it's like a group of soloists all kind of shining at slightly different times. And like I said, when I try to divide this into, maybe this 3 plus 4 plus 3 or whatever, it's always a compromise, because I will be doing 1 or 2 person in the ensemble wrong because I divided this way, whereas the rest of the ensemble will be like, thank you, this is where we start playing. And so that was a real challenging piece to figure out, and to make the ensemble play the 5 against 4 together. I remember we did. Because it's funny, like going back to Daniel's piece, the Oshún Olodì, when the tempo is fast, kind of dividing into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's not so difficult, right? Because there's a regularity. But once you start stretching out, once it's taking place within a large span of time, then the divisions are not so clear anymore, because you have to divide really, really, really small. And I thought we had a lot of fun making the students learn like how to do 5 against 4 and 7 against 3 and all that kind of thing. Yeah. How was it in the rehearsal process when Kee Yong came and kind of gave us a little bit more about the piece? Do you feel like everything just kind of made sense a lot easier?
Yeah, I think it really helped, because like some of the clarinet parts, I felt that it was quite uncomfortable with the jumps. So I actually asked him, and he was actually explaining, oh, when I wrote this for the ensemble that was playing initially, the player was requesting for such leaps, but actually he initially didn't wanted those. Yeah, so actually in the performance we heard, I think we adjusted some of the octave leaps and everything, yeah, to actually what he conceptualized, yeah. And I think that's one of the perks of working with living composers. Yeah, and especially if they're there during the rehearsals. Yeah.
Right, so you can tell them about specific sections, and even show them, is this exactly the color you want,
Yeah.
or what are the ways we can get around doing this? Because I remember there was a part where it was a really soft and very, very high clarinet harmonics.
Yeah. All the high G sharps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how about for you, Carolin?
I mean, I love it so much when the composers are there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is why we're doing what we're doing, because we want to collaborate, we want to create something together, right? And it's not so much about the technical aspect, right? Of course, they can assist and they can help and they can assure you that what you're doing is fine or not, and help you out, But it's also the psychological aspect, the motivation, that wow, we can play a piece. Somebody has put so much time and energy in creating this piece of music, right? And this person is here and they're sharing a part of their inner self, because it's like also we create something that is like mind, it's like a creation of our mind, and you put yourself in this vulnerable space to share your artwork, and then you make it sound all together, right? So there you need all the parts. You need the conductor, you need the composer, you need the performance, and I think this is the real beautiful thing, right? That it comes all together now. So I think especially for the students, it's very important that the composers are there and share their ideas and introduce their pieces. Physical appearance is something very, very strong, right? Very focused.
Right.
Yeah.
And even though the piece is already so well notated, like everything is very, very clearly. I mean, he takes a lot of time putting in all the details, and that's something I really, really appreciate in the score, because it doesn't leave anything to chance. I mean, it's very technically challenging, which is where we run into problems, and with maybe some of the students, they don't have the technical ability to do all, especially with the strings, the really high stuff. But still, it's like it's a team effort, and that's what makes the whole creation very, very exciting. Yeah.
And how was it like for you to prepare this with the students in YST?
I must say at the beginning it was definitely challenging, because for obvious reasons. So we actually spent the first few rehearsals really just kind of ironing out what are the special techniques that they need to do, because a lot of the students who play in the ensemble, this is kind of their first or second time experiencing new music. And so at this point in the semester, they have done one or two concerts already, so they're not kind of thrown in the deep blue end of the sea. But still, a lot of these techniques are quite challenging for them. And so we spent, just going through the rhythms, going through, kind of nuts and bolts. And it's also my own way of preparing the piece, like how can I make sure I sing the rhythms right? Can I do the 5/4, with a metronome comfortably? And then, shifting into 7. And because there are a lot of, I know the percussion part is played by Yuru, and it's very intricate because there are a lot of places where he plays the same rhythm as the bass, and then sometimes they play off beats with each other. And so there are a lot of places that you have to, rehearse, that you guys watch each other, and you kind of the whole traffic of the whole situation. And then on top of that, then we still need to find this lyricism, because once music gets very technical, the danger is that you're just really counting 1 and 2 and beep, and you forget that there's still melody in some ways. I still hear pop pop beep, and trying to find that lyricism in it, and the soloistic flair, and also the dynamics. I mean, in the obviously when it's live, you can hear the dynamic contrast more, plus the stereo effect, and then you can hear all the individual voices coming out. So it was not easy to put together, but it was a lot of fun. It was a big challenge, and I really appreciate that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Also, if it's not like a cultural thing, like in the school, because like when I was in Amsterdam, certain departments were absolutely sensational with like modern music, you know, but certain departments, they would never touch anything beyond like Stravinsky, you know, that's the max. Yeah. And it's a pity because they are excellent players, but they only play music by dead men. Yeah, and I think this is something that we need to start doing, at least here. Yeah, because I mean, we have excellent composers, but we're not doing much. Yeah, in promoting their music.
Yeah, which is the point of this series.
Yeah.
And I think it's really fun that in the first installment we really look at our local composers and really feature their pieces, so the community listening to this can see, oh, this piece, this person wrote this piece for this instrument. And then in the second installment, when I'm talking to performers, what I really hope to get is to feature some pieces from the region, but also some pieces from outside the region, things that you have experienced in different parts of the world, and kind of, just really in a big exposure.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting to learn pieces that I've never heard before. I mean, these two pieces that you guys presented today, it's really, really wonderful. And even the big orchestral works, like with Alex, getting to know Cheha's Spiegel. I mean, that's so wonderful, because I wouldn't have done that by myself. I had a certain direction of music I want to listen to, but without everybody's experience coming together,
and it's also just exposing the audience to such music, because sometimes we think it's too highbrow, and whatever, but actually when you do it good, it's a good piece of music is a good piece of music, no matter what.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you can play Beethoven symphonies and mess them up and people will still yeah.
Oh. No.
Yeah, a good piece of music is a good piece of music. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, great. Now we are getting close to the end of our episode. I just wanted to ask you guys if you guys have any upcoming activities. I know Daniel, you have something coming up next week that's really exciting.
Yes, I do. On Tuesday evening, my quartet Cole will be part of the NAC Living Room series from 8 to 8:30 p.m. Yeah, so it's on Facebook as well. It'll be a live broadcast. Yeah.
And would you tell us a little bit about the music, or is that a secret?
It's quite, well, maybe you keep it a secret, yeah, because it's quite varied. We have 2 solo pieces and 3 quartet pieces. Yeah, and we try to use as much as we could with the technology, that we are doing this now, and try to connect more with the audience. Yeah, so hopefully that pulls through, and yeah, hope to see you there.
That's really exciting, right? I mean, at this point when we are forced to use technology, then all of us get on board and really experiment and see what's happening, what's possible. How about for Carolin, any interesting projects you want to tell us about?
I hope we will get back to normal as soon as possible, and I hope that we can in August. We have a contemporary music concert coming up.
This is that School of the Arts?
Yes. So the concert hall, but we don't know how the situation is going to evolve. But if it's happening, it's going to be really exciting. And we also want to present the piece we just heard, right? So yeah, I will keep you updated on this. The concert is called Catching Shadows, and if not now because of COVID and everything, then early next year we just shifted. Because 2021, I've heard it's going to be a good year.
It's so funny.
But yeah.
No, I mean, you when you say the title of the concert is called Catching Shadows, it reminds me of a piece by Peter et Voce is called Shadows. It's for solo flute and clarinet and an ensemble. And actually, Kee Yong told me about this piece, and I think it's really one of my favorite pieces because it's so. I mean, he wrote it at a very, very sad time when his son passed away. So it's a very emotional piece. I don't mean to end on a morbid note, but it's such a beautiful piece, and if you can check it out, that's really, really great. Peter et Voce's Shadows for flute, clarinet, and ensemble. Great. So as we are nearing 11:30, which is kind of our new ending time now, I'd like to thank Daniel and Carolin for being on the show. And I would like to thank all our audience who sat with us and listened to all this really wonderful music. So thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this, Boon Hua. So important. You're doing an amazing job.
So important.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Great. So I hope to see all of you next Wednesday, where we will have unboxing episode 9 with Christoph, who plays in the SSO and is also one of our frequent collaborators at Yong Su To. So I hope to see everybody then. And in the meantime, stay safe and healthy. Good night.
See you.
Good night. Bye-bye.